using the whole body to create one message in different languages at the same time. So.
A star on Nashville's skyline since 2004, when she began her career with the Nashville Ballet, Mollie Sansone has had a remarkable career as a dancer, teacher, and choreographer. Her most recent work, Wild Swans, a children's ballet based on Hans Christian Andersen's story of the same name, is available and free to watch on the Nashville Ballet's website. Music City Review journalist Kendell had the opportunity to speak with Sansone about her aesthetics, her dance, and her work with the Nashville Ballet. The following is a recording of that discussion.
A review of Anthology.
Mm-hmm.
Did you choose the story, or was the story given to you about Gertrude and Elizabeth?
It was given to me.
Oh.
Yep. Paul Vasterling, the former artistic director, now artistic director emeritus.
Mm-hmm.
He produced the whole ballet, the whole evening. And he chose different choreographers to collaborate with him. And I think he kind of assigned each choreographer a concept or a story. And I'm sure, he's really in tune with the people he works with. And he picked, specific choreographers to do certain concepts that he thought would match well. And by that point, yes, I had already done I have choreographed a few pieces already that had the women empowerment message. So I was really attracted to the feminist aspect of their relationship. So it was definitely a good fit, and such a special pot. And I really, really enjoyed diving into their history and story and how it impacted Nashville. Yes, that was such a beautiful time for me. I enjoyed it very much.
And then when you talked about this idea of women's empowerment, how did I wasn't able to get find any clips of the Lizzie Borden piece, but how did that fit into this theme that I see throughout your work?
I love that you brought that up. Well, so that's Paul's. I was not a choreographer by that point yet. I don't believe. I can't remember what year we performed.
I think you danced in it.
I did. I danced in it. What an experience that was. Oh my gosh. So almost the same decade, I feel like, as Elizabeth and Gertrude's story kind of developed. I did find a lot of similarities just by doing both pieces. So I appreciate you brought that up. But yeah, I mean, kind of these women of this time period that determined their own fate in a way. Lizzie, it's suspected that she murdered her parents.
Mm-hmm.
Not yet figured out, still don't know the verdict, but in Paul's rendition of the story, he made it clear that she did do it. And she was ill-treated. She wasn't treated well by her parents and abused by her father. And so it was her own way of determining what's right and wrong, what she deserved, the freedom she deserved in a way. So
yeah, there is some idea, and it's interesting how few people tell the part about the abusive environment. They tell the part about what she did, but not what was done to her.
Exactly.
Which I find really fascinating. But that's this idea of women who are taking their own destiny in their own hand, or as you say, who determine their own fate.
Yeah.
And that follows through in Wild Birds, it seems, because it is a story of a woman who is making a sacrifice, but choosing, not forced, but choosing to make that sacrifice for her brothers in order to save them. What brought this story to your attention?
This was also, again, Paul, with his creative mind, bringing all these stories for opportunities for me to choreograph too. But I love that angle with Eliza, the main character, being the heroine of the story. And that feminine aspect of being the hero. But also I loved how it was familial love as opposed to love in a romantic sense with a partner. And that's true unconditional love, what you would do for your family and the sacrifices you would make for them. Yeah, and I mean, even in the Hans Christian Andersen story, the full version of it, she, couldn't speak for days and days and days. She sewed these cloaks to where her hands would blister and bleed, and the story is really beautiful. So, yeah, it just demonstrates love at its purest form in that sense.
Yeah, and I wanted to show a little bit of that.
I'm Mollie Sansone. I am the resident choreographer at Nashville Ballet. This work is called The Wild Swans. It is based off of a Hans Christian Andersen story. It's about a sister, Eliza, and her 11 brothers. And the 11 brothers get cursed with a spell that they turn to swans during the day and back to boys at night. So they go off flying all day long, and then when the sun sets, they have to find land very quickly before they turn to boys. And then the next day, they fly again. I don't want to give it away, but in the end, she's the hero. She saves the boys from this evil curse. So there's that feminist aspect. The swans, we have huge wings that they wear, and they're all outlined, every single feather, with black marker. But those wings all have to fit in a certain amount of space. And so that dictates the type of choreography I'm able to do and not do. The feathers being outlined, like I was saying, every single feather, there's going to be an application overlaid on the video that makes the dancers look like sketches. These outlines on the feathers are going to really pop.
And that was one of the things that I have noticed in your choreographies generally, kind of an interesting use of the arms. And in that place, of course, they have feathers and stuff, so they have to use their arms in a way that's not necessarily typical. But I also noticed in Anthology that there was also an interesting use of arms, and
Yeah.
and see what see if I can get it together. Okay.
It was interesting too, because it was a challenge again that I took on, short time to tell their whole story. So I wanted to use their arms and arm gestures to kind of emulate that.
Yeah, here's a little bit of the Gertrude and Elizabeth story from Anthology.
Was sort of hidden. Now that we're able to have this opportunity with Anthology to recognize their story, recognize their love, and pay tribute to all that they did, I think is really magical. So I'm hoping that the audience walks away with an enlightened feeling of love.
So the crossing of the arms in front, I noticed because the in my many adventures, I was able to go to Indonesia, and part of the trip was to learn a little bit about Indonesian dance. And I noticed that they use parts of the body that in Western dance we don't use. So I was particularly interested. We had to do something with our hands where we just use our fingertips. And I thought, we don't do that. We don't use that. That's fascinating. So in your choreographies, I noticed that the arms began to take a more equal measure with the rest of the body, and I find that fascinating.
Well, thank you for recognizing that. I really try to put a lot of intent in every single arm gesture in all of my work, because I'm trying to think, was that Elizabeth? She was part of a lot of church groups, women for women, and that was kind of how she got started on her path of becoming a policewoman. So that's the cross, and I added that in there for her.
Well, I did not realize what I was seeing. I mean, it looked like a cross, and I called it a cross.
And then I think she bends down on her knees, so that was a genuflecting at the same time. So
that's interesting, because so this seems to be an idea that's really original with you. because I don't see that in too many other works. How did that come to you? Is it just an attempt to incorporate the wholeness of the body?
Definitely that. And I think there's a lot more that could be said with our arms because as dancers, because I think, especially classical ballet, there's a technique, there's certain steps. When you get to modern ballet and improvisation, there's more freedom. However, arms, there's not really there's no vocabulary, there's no language, as opposed to arm positions for classical ballet. But then, just putting your hand up, there's no word for what this means, or there's no word for that, so you can, again, using the whole body to create one message in different languages at the same time. So
I think that was one of the things that you occasionally saw in works like a Martha Graham, that she would use the body in unexpected ways.
Yes.
That's kind of one of the things that I wanted to do this interview was talk about this idea, because I wanted to talk to somebody who had both been involved in the Wild Birds, which is 4 children, and Nutcracker, which is both 4 children and the child in all of us, but also involves children. And you've been involved in both productions. So I thought that was fascinating. What kind of connections do you see between Wild Birds and Nutcracker, if any?
Well, again, it's centered around a young woman. I mean, Clara, a Nutcracker. It's all about her dream and how she goes on this journey and how she evolves and matures and grows at the end because of this experience. And again, Paul does a really good job at making that strong women angle for sure, because she learns all about this magic from her uncle Drosselmeyer, and kind of, again, she's in charge of her own fate. He always is Drosselmeyer is always pulling the magic out of her head, out of her, body, so that the joy of life and of the holiday season is coming from her. She's the pure inspiration for it all. So
what was your first experience with a Nutcracker?
Ever in my life? My first experience, from what I can remember, and I don't know if this is more because I watched a video of it, but I was 3 years old and I was part of the Arabian scene. And I was the littlest of all the kids in the Arabian scene. But we come out for the bows at the end and we're all in a line and we bow and then we run away. And I was just standing there like this, looking at the audience, and forgot to run around with all my friends. So I was such a little ham. I was just like, so that was my first memory of it.
Oh my goodness. One of my questions was going to be, did you ever dance in the children's role? And that's clearly there. So
I did. And I also did our recent filming with Nashville Ballet. I was Clara.
Oh,
and that was during COVID as well. So that was truly an experience for sure. But to see, the whole ballet, I've witnessed it professionally in all the roles, on this track, and then seeing it through a child's eye, literally, brought a whole new perspective to the ballet for me. So I was thankful for the experience.
Well, I found another little snippet. This was from a rehearsal.
Oh. Yes, this is a long time ago.
I just thought that was so nice to have. I love how the Nashville Ballet has promoted its own growth by having the classes for children and kind of growing homegrown dancers here. And that's one thing I noticed also in Anthology, where local choreographers were involved, local dancers were included, and yet some guests bringing in kind of fresh blood. So I really do admire that about what's happening.
And even in Anthology, we had young children, and we had people of all ages in the show, which was really beautiful too.
So how was it being the Snow Queen? How did you feel about that role in particular?
Back then, I mean, I don't know. I never danced Snow Queen we have newer choreography for that now.
Mm-hmm.
So this, what you saw is older, and
yeah,
it was probably one of the hardest pas de deux I've done. It's very challenging, and for me especially, I was a shorter
mm-hmm.
dancer. I really am short, but so all the lines are really require you to be really long and reaching through your fingertips, through your toenails, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so finding that length and almost stillness was a challenge for me. I like to move fast, and I like to get down to the floor, and
Well, yeah, I had another clip of you kind of moving more quickly.
Oh yeah.
As the Italian doll. Oh, I think I turned this on. Yeah, especially at least choreographically, or as far as the dancing goes, like the kind of articulated movements that show that those dolls of that era were so separate. All their parts were put together separate. There's an interesting stiffness that was really, really very effective.
Yeah.
And I remember very much. I don't know if you know the dancer Maria Talchi, who was one of the first ones to do the Firebird, and she had her bird-like movements were just so fascinating, and that it's not the same kind of movement, but the same concept that you can embody the special. So I thought that was really fascinating. I was really interested.
Thank you. I think that was close to when, because I originated that role when Paul redid Nashville's Nutcracker in 2008, and I remember we were almost for that role going to have tights that had hand painted hinges on the knees and the ankles for the doll. I mean, it doesn't need it, right? And that's probably
no, it doesn't need it, because you actually, as I saw some of the movements, I looked to see if they might be there, because it did occur to me that would be something someone could think of. But yeah, it didn't need it. It didn't need it.
Right. The movement
made it come into our minds, so we didn't need to actually see it with our eyes.
Right.
That's fantastic. Oh, this is so exciting. I'm so excited. As we come to the end, are there some upcoming projects that you're excited about, either as a dancer or as a choreographer?
Yes. So a piece of mine will be premiering in February's Attitude program. It's titled Speak. Kind of another empowering message, but it will be, I don't want to give too much away, I guess, but I'm taking the idea of people being on their soapboxes. So it's kind of set in that pre or World War II era, kind of, where all the protests were happening and things, and just utilizing that metaphor for people to vocalize their opinions and what their relationship is to that. And so there's different scenes and different sized boxes that mean different things, and so that will be premiering in February. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, because it seems like we are there wasn't much dancing in the Jonah people. There was a little bit in the opera that the Nashville Symphony premiered. But it was fascinating, this idea of referring to historical and political events. I mean, Anthology has some of that. And also, if you think about it, Spaces gets there too, because this is a real cultural event we're dealing with. We're all feeling a little bit boxed in. So how do we express ourselves during that? So I think that one of the brave things that keeps the ballet popular and relevant is paying tribute to the older ballets like Nutcracker, which is going to be with us forever, thank goodness, but also acknowledging that dance has a place in the life we live right now.
Appreciating where we've come from and where we are now, definitely.
Yeah,
those milestones in life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So is there a fantasy project you have that you have not yet been able to achieve, but that's kind of bubbling in the back of your imagination?
I have always had the dream to do a Dolly Parton ballet. Yeah, and have her sing for it.
Oh,
yeah,
that would be great, because her newest album has come out.
I know. I just listened to it.
And
it's quite good.
I just think some kind of almost an anthology of her life.
Absolutely. Talk about relevancy, right? She's with that album, even like taking the classics, but then also spinning it her way, adding her own new work. I would die if I worked with her. I don't think I could get any work done. I would just I think I'd be just crying every day.
I think that she would be very honored to have, a person, at your stage of life who considers her to be a strong influence. So I think it would be a wonderful experience for both of you. So I'm crossing my fingers.
Thank you. Let's put it in the universe.
And if it comes out, I'll be right there.
Thank you.
Not the best seats. I want to be about
wherever
20.
you want to sit.
So I can
have your support.
Well, thank you. This has been so delightful. Thank you for making
my first
interview feel so comfortable. I appreciate it.
Good. Thank you so much for taking the time to interview me.
And hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yes.
On the dance floor or behind the scenes, crossing your fingers for a choreography that's coming out.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Go to see the ballet. Go to Nutcracker that's coming up, and we will put in the show notes a link to Wild Birds so you can see some of Mollie's choreography. So thank you very much.